Good afternoon, everybody. Thanks for tuning in. John Kelly, profiler and addiction specialist. Welcome. Welcome to today's show. It's going to be focusing on LA model Maleesa Mooney, who was grotesquely murdered and found in a refrigerator in LA. It's a very, very sad case. She was also pregnant. Unbelievable. Just unbelievable. You know, when you think you've seen it all, hold on because more's coming. Today, we are very, very lucky, and I'm really happy to announce that we have Dustin Ranck with us. Dustin's been on many times in the past. Fantastic private investigator, licensed all the way, and really knows his stuff, knows the streets, knows the bad guys, knows the whole deal, okay? And, welcome, Dustin. Can't thank
Thanks a
you
lot,
enough
John.
for coming on. We got to
My
put our
pleasure.
heads together here and see what we can come up with on a couple of these cases that we have going on here. Too many people, getting really horrifically murdered. I mean, not just murdered. I mean, this guy that killed Maleesa Mooney. I mean, this guy really went to town on her, sad to say. This is one evil dude that we're looking at here. I'd also like to give a shout out to Grizzly True Crime, Grizzly K at Grizzly True Crime. She's fantastic. The show's fantastic. She covers shows in depth, trials, you name it, and it's always in depth. It's very comprehensive. She does an excellent job. And please keep her in your thoughts when you're searching YouTube for something to watch. Also, I think it's very important to put out there too as well that we will be putting up a link to Dustin's artwork, tattoo work. Really some incredible stuff. You got to see it. So we'll have a link up in the description. Please take a look at Dustin's work. He's really good. Okay. So anyway, with all that being said, what do you say we get started here? You know, Dustin, one other thing. I want to send our deepest condolences out to the friends and family of Melisa Mooney. We're very sorry for your loss. It's tragic and terrible. And hopefully, this guy bites the dust soon. And hopefully law enforcement's not too far away from them. With that being said, now I want to get to, talking about Melisa and, how horrible this was. You know, we have her being found, Dustin, with her ankles and wrists being tied and a gag in her mouth, okay, in the refrigerator. I mean, what do you get out of that? I mean, that whole thing, ankles tied, wrists tied, gag in the mouth, and stuffed in the refrigerator.
Yeah, same here, shout out to the family because what a horrible way to find your daughter, you just can't say enough. You can't put enough support out there for them and what they're experiencing right now. But yeah, you've got this woman that's been bound and gagged. I mean, that like drops right into that power and control thing that we talk about pretty often. We've got it didn't sound like, I don't know from reports whether that was, pre or post mortem, but regardless is it still happened. And he's got this girl stuffed into a fridge. And it makes me wonder, John, if we've got any other action going on that we've kind of talked about behind the scenes, like, what's the significance of that refrigerator? I mean, if power and control is like the binds and the gags, what's the refrigerator all about? Especially if she's dead. He didn't stick her in there when she was alive, most likely. My thought process around that, based on other things that I've seen, would be a time thing, right? Like, so he's got this girl in his control zone, and like you said, these thrill seeker guys, when you've got somebody, that's the fantasy, right? That the vulnerability, the control, but And it didn't sound like he did even that great of a job with the refrigerator reports, where there was, like, obviously some blood and fluids around and stuff. But you to try and attempt and to, like, kind of half-ass conceal that would tell me this guy's trying to buy some time. If he's a local guy, he may be trying to split town or move on, get even just buying a couple of days. He doesn't want that thing found immediately. uh I didn't know what else the significance of that would be, but it didn't sound like he was in a big hurry. If he's coming back with a bag of goods. Now, it sounds like the bindings and the gags were household items that were already there. So we don't know what interaction took place ahead of that. But if he's coming back to clean it up, he's taken a little bit of time here to get her wrangled. I'm getting a body in a fridge. I mean, it's not something I'm doing every other week, but it can't be that easy. Any easier it isn't just simply carrying a body or transporting it, but getting it stuffed into a box like that. It's not like it's laying on the floor and you're rolling it in like a chest or something. It's got to take some effort to make that work logistically. But man, if that guy's, he's got a dead body on his hands in this apartment that we've talked about, secure access, secure ingress, egress. I mean, you got neighbors all around. I think he's just wanting to buy some time.
Yeah, there's no question about it. He was trying to buy time. When you look at that situation, obviously, when you put her into the refrigerator, she does not have to be gagged. She's already dead. Okay.
Right.
So I have to believe that the gag was before time, beforehand, and I have to believe that from the beating that the paper said this girl took, that this guy really had her in a chair and had her secured. And, they talk about restraints on her ankles. They talk about, her wrists being tied, restraints on her wrists, gag in her mouth. That tells me this guy probably, before he killed her, went to town on her in a chair or whatever and had her, secure. Now, yeah, when you get to the point of buying time, there's no question about it. But you see, this guy has some sophistication. He knows a little bit, He knows that unrefrigerated things start to spoil. Okay. So if you have a body, and sooner than later, and usually it's pretty soon, okay, that body will start to decompose, and there will be a major stench from that body, okay, which will engulf that whole area, that whole floor there. It's really a horrible smell when a body starts to decompose. But if you have a body in the refrigerator, on ice, so to speak, or in a colder area, it will take much longer to decompose than it would if it was just laying on the floor. So that smell, that stench from the decomposing body is not going to alert anybody. It's not going to be out in the hall. People aren't going to be walking by and saying, "Oh, what's that terrible smell? There's something wrong inside that room," right? But it's all about the buying time. It's all about the buying time. So this guy's sophisticated enough where he understands what he's done. I understand they have a picture of him going back to clean up. So, he understands that he needs to take care of some business here. And he might have left some DNA. He's also sophisticated enough to know not to leave the body just on the floor, that if he can, to try and get it into the refrigerator. Can't be seen if it's enclosed in the refrigerator, and also stops the smell for a while from a decomposing body. Okay, so this guy is no dumbbell. This guy's been around. Don't forget he came back up to clean up too, right? So this guy's no dummy. I'd be extremely surprised if this is his first time. No way it looks like his first time. No way. I mean, he
Yeah, for
looks
sure.
like he's it's not his first rodeo that this guy's been around. Um, the other thing is when you realize as well that this woman was pregnant and probably at some point during this assault, and this was a horrible assault, she had marks all over her face, neck, shoulder, back. I mean, he really gave her a beating. I mean, you have to say to yourself, "Whoa, you know, this guy's really sadistic." But to really add to how sadistic, she had to plead for her life and her baby's life. I mean, that's just normal. At some point, when she sees herself in trouble and she sees this guy gaining control, she's going to say, "Please don't kill me. Please don't kill me. I'm pregnant. Please." And then it'll get to the point, "Please don't hurt my baby. Please don't kill me. Don't hurt my baby." This guy obviously didn't care. He didn't miss a beat. I mean, he just went forward, with this horrific attack. And, we got quite an animal here. Um, and there was a bit of a physical struggle, it looks like. Obviously, she was no match for him. Um, she also came back positive for cocaine. Do you have any from the coroner's report or the toxicology report from the coroner? Do you have any feedback on that?
Yeah, that's an interesting one, and as far as drugs go, I mean, obviously, cocaine and the modeling business kind of go hand in hand, man. It's been like that forever. So that doesn't surprise me. And I'm not accusing her of, being a substance abuser or anything. I mean, there's kind of what they call Cali sober, it's usually people that don't do drugs anymore, but they smoke pot. But there's a lot of, just recreational users that
Mhm.
don't kind of fall into a typical category down there just because of the lifestyle. But it did make me think long and hard about, as we had talked about, what is this point of contact with Melisa? What's his, how is this guy getting access to a building that's not easy to get access to? Well, man, if you're a drug dealer doing out calls, you tend, those guys are way different than street level hand to hand car window type of dudes, that are extremely violent. Not that the other guys aren't either, but they got to, like you said, John, they're a little smarter. A little more, they think a little bit more because they're interacting with people they're salesmen, like they get a roll around town, they do these out calls. They might take a little bit of a boost, they get paid, and they move on to the next one. So they're kind of everybody's best buddy. So it made me wonder, is she got, you could make that connection through work, you could make it through a club. I mean, there's all kinds of ways that, an out call dealer might come into contact with somebody because they're social creatures, you wouldn't peg one of them like you would a, low level like street soldier, you know what I mean? And that kind of
Mhm.
goes back to, we were talking about, the gang angle about 78th Street way back when, and this guy, people were, well, if he's in a gang, he doesn't have tattoos. Yeah, he might not be identifiable. I've known a few guys, from bad neighborhoods that, man, I mean, heavy set represented neighborhoods look like just regular dudes, because they were in it for the money, man. I mean, they thought like, their drug business like a corporate entity,
Mhm.
and they were flying under the radar. What they craved, John, was that accessibility. It's kind of like being a rock star. You've got access to models, you've got access to musicians. I mean, you're not trying to necessarily blow your cover because that is a big part of the juice, and
Mhm.
even a lot of those dealers, a lot of those guys don't get high on their supply, on their own supply. Some of them do for sure, but they're super hyper functional.
Mhm.
So it wouldn't surprise me that if there is a dealer connection to Melisa, that Yeah, this guy could be a real charmer. Hell, he might be servicing a few people in that building for all we know.
Mhm.
But at some point, it's important for your audience to understand how I wouldn't say that that apartment complex is hard to get into, but it's not some like, in the flyover states where I am, and we've got tons of apartments here, they're out in the middle of essentially nowhere. They're in residential neighborhoods, right? That people don't give a second thought to who's coming and going because they're out in the open. Now, these are secured buildings. So it's a little bit of a different story. This guy's got to have he's got to have some kind of gift of gab, or he's got to have some sort of low profile persona that is allowing him to move in and out of there. Like, you've got to ring in, you've got to ring the front desk, you've got to ring the person that lives in the apartment. You've got to have some point of contact to get access. Now, a lot of those buildings also will have other exits for fire code, right? You can't just have one in, one out if you've got 200 tenants. That's never going to fly. But those exits typically are also secured. You can't buzz in from them, but you can go out of them. Now, this guy might have been, if he's a thinking guy, if he's somewhat sophisticated, he could have been playing that whole Bundy ruse. Maybe he dressed up as a delivery guy. He's got a couple of boxes. He's got them on a hand truck. Hey, I'm struggling. Somebody coming in and out of the building. Hey, oh, hey, would you hold that door? Sure. Yeah. Seen this dude doing deliveries a million times. Boom, he's in. And now he's got access to the place and he can do whatever he wants.
Mhm. Yeah, and I think I made a mistake too. Her name is Melisa, not Melissa. Is that correct?
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, all right. I'm sorry. I said Melissa in the beginning. It's Melisa. Okay. I want to correct myself there. When I'm wrong, I'm wrong. Yeah, Maleesa Mooney. Okay, great. So, what a shame. I mean, this is a pretty sad situation, and hopefully, some of the information you're putting out there too can help, identify this guy and get him knocked down sooner or later. Because, like I said, this isn't his first time, and it's not going to be his last time. You know,
Oh,
it's
for
not going to be
sure.
his last rodeo either. I'll tell you.
Yeah. And if you think
There's no
about it, John,
question about
this,
that. The other thing too, even though she was, beat up pretty bad, even though she was beat up pretty bad, really, that was not the cause of death. The cause of death, as far as the coroner goes, at this point is speculating, and I guess he's pretty sure about this, was asphyxiation, right? But there were no marks on her neck, no strangulation marks on her neck, right? So I'm thinking a pillow or something like that. Okay. Um, but pretty interesting. And I know that again, that does show some sophistication. And a lot of these guys are into that as the third act, the end of the game, so to speak. Earlier you mentioned, this is how a lot of these guys get their juice. Yeah, they get stimulated in all the wrong ways, and this as crazy as it is to somebody like this, it's probably extremely stimulating, I'm sorry, and pretty euphoric. I mean, because this guy went all the way. This guy went all the way.
absolutely.
He didn't leave much here to be imagined, if you know what I mean.
Absolutely.
You know, um, she was only in that apartment for about a month, I think, or at least
Hmm.
for a month. Was renting it for a month. I mean, what do you think about that? I mean, like Dr. Lecter said in Silence of the Lambs, we covet what we see.
Sure.
Do you think maybe stalking or, I mean, how did he know her? How did he know she was there? Obviously nobody else was murdered like that in that apartment
Yeah.
complex before she moved in. So, somebody got out there pretty quickly. You wonder too, Did he live there somewhere or somehow? But there is I believe, like you said, there has to be a very strong connection because, he was moving around. And like I said, they even have a video, even though it's not a good video yet, of him going back to the apartment with a bag and probably had cleanup stuff in
Yeah.
the bag. So, this guy knew his way around there. There's no question about it. So I think you make a lot of good points there. The next day, um, I guess, um, you know, I guess it was that. Well, maybe you can't tell if it was the next day or not when he was showing up with the bags or whatever. So I'm going to hold that right there, right? Um, what do you think? Anything else on that, or am I jogging anything in your brain about the asphyxiation not being strangulation, or about her only being there a month?
Yeah, yeah, those are all good points. One thing that I had made on side of my notes here, about Melisa, like if she's being bound, we'll kind of step back for a second and I'll go forward. But if she's being, if she's bound in a chair, it sounds it's an interesting place for, when you look at a lot of these death scenes where people have been beaten, they've been, tortured, all kinds of bad stuff. Somebody that's been tied to a chair sounds a lot like an interrogation, or a tactic that somebody would use to extract information from somebody else to keep them from aspirating on blood or vomit from, the trauma or the damage that they've done to their body. I mean, a lot of, you start pounding on somebody, man, especially around the head, that if they're laying down, man, that fluid's running down. You swallow it or you're going to start breathing it at some point. And if it's bad enough, you're going to start to choke on it. If you start to choke on it, then you could get stomach contents as well as blood that are going to mix, and you're going to aspirate and you're going to die. So as far as her being there a month, yeah, that's a really interesting thing for a new tenant, right? That's not, LA is such a big place, and it's so easy to be anonymous in a place like that, which is kind of a stark juxtaposition to this apartment complex we have where, yeah, I get it. People are distracted and they don't know their neighbors like they did, like when we were kids and stuff. And that's fine. But it's still, I mean, here's this guy committing a murder, and he's got neighbors on both sides, or at least on one side if she's in a corner apartment. I mean, that's a tricky situation. So if she's only been there a month, that sounds to me more like somebody that would follow somebody along. Oh, hey, like I've moved, my connection moved. Somehow this guy, I think, had to know that she was there, had some point of contact with her. Again, we talked could be through. I mean, I think Melisa also was doing real estate, so she was out and around town, making contacts, which would certainly put you in touch with all kinds of people, especially in high end LA, where, man, you got people up to all kinds of interesting stuff that operate outside of the law in a various in sundry degree of ways, because they've got power and money and they've got connections. So a lot of those folks, yeah, and I'm not saying that they're flaunting it, but you go down there and start meeting people, it's not real hard to kind of figure out who the players are pretty quick,
Mm-hmm.
So that would certainly strike me as, hey, I've moved, here's my address, or this guy, or, if he's servicing other people in the building, whether he's a delivery guy, a security guy, a dealer, either way, you're in the service business, right? You've got access to people. That's the main thing. Man, he could have seen Melisa. There could have been something internally with his fantasy process that,
Right. Yeah.
we heard, Raider talk about that too, where he'd just be trolling around in his dog catcher. Man, as soon as somebody caught his eye, boom, he'd lock in on it. And the stalking and processing part would immediately begin. I mean, he'd go, as John, because I've heard you talk about it a million times, but, I mean, he'd go years sometimes,
Mm-hmm.
decades even.
Mm-hmm.
But man, when he saw the one, boom, it was on. and he was like a dog with a bone. And that could have very easily have been this case too. I mean, you got a lot of good looking people in LA, a lot of people up to a lot of cool stuff. They're career building, they're making contacts. I mean, you got to think at some point, whether it was a one-off deal or it was a cultivated connection, that he had some point of contact with Melisa. It would seem strange that, she's not in a residential area where she's out mowing the lawn or running to the grocery store. I mean, that's a pretty contained area. You can't really, yeah, from another building, you might be able to like spy on somebody. But like you said, John, if you're seeing that every day in an apartment complex like that, you've got to see her more or less outside of the building, or you've got to be knocking on her door. I mean, it's the only way, because you're not just going to see her roaming around, especially a professional like Melisa. I mean, yeah, I'm sure she had a life outside of work, as we all do, but at the same time, she sounded like she was super smart and super driven and focused on her career. Obviously, she's, has this pregnancy. She's probably not out running around to all hours of the night doing crazy stuff. Maybe she was, but it doesn't sound like most moms that I know that are working those types of jobs and living in those types of places. So I would find it hard to believe that, unless this guy is just, and he could be, I mean, he could be somebody like Dennis Rader, where he's just on the prowl. He might have that job that allows him to move in and out of people's lives with no problem. And as soon as one sticks, he goes after it. So
Yeah, it's unbelievable, the urge. I mean, the risk goes out the window with a
yeah,
lot of them that get that urge. Once that urge takes hold, okay, and they've focused in on a victim. I mean, lots of times, and I've seen it, they don't care if it's daylight, middle of the afternoon, okay, somebody on a highway that could be highly trafficked. I mean, they're going after that victim. I mean,
mm-hmm.
that urge is overwhelming to them. And it's also stimulating to them too, because of its risk value.
Right.
They get off on the risk, as well. And the risky behavior that adds into it.
Absolutely. And like you called it out before, John, that, we've, if we were looking at, this 78th Street assault and Rachel Moren, I mean, you don't really get much more high risk than that. You get this high risk assault and burglary, and then you've got a brutal murder in daylight. I mean, 6 p.m. in August, in an open hiking trail. Man, oh man. I mean, you got to think that guy is just cutting it loose.
Well, this is what I want to ask you too. I mean, how about, and what do you think about, Melisa being found only, what, 6 miles away or something
Yeah,
from
yeah,
the DNA of
right.
the sadistic killer of Rachel Moren
Yeah,
out in Maryland? I mean, what do you think
right.
about that?
Well, that's pretty hard to ignore. I
Seriously,
mean,
that means you got, you know, two sadistic killers. I'm not gonna say serial killers, two sadistic killers,
yeah,
okay, within 6 miles of each other.
that's
I
right.
mean, and we're looking at two women. One was a verified model who worked as a model. Okay, that was her career.
Yeah.
But Rachel Morin had model characteristics.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
I mean physical characteristics of a model.
Yeah, very, very pretty, super good shape, fitness oriented. By all accounts, was a, great mom as well. She had a gaggle of kids that all seemed to have nothing but good stuff to say about her. I mean, that would just even underscores the tragedy, all of that even more too. Yeah, it's something that is, you kind of taking a 50,000 foot view of this, you just can't ignore the similarities and the proximity. And then then you've got this East Coast connection. Well, if we've got a guy that is used to having access to people, whatever degree that is. He's got to have the ability to move coastal with a job. It could be a gig economy worker. It could be, I mean, any of those, delivery, security, and going back to the drug dealer angle, man, those are jobs you can do anywhere. Literally, like if I am in my state and I want to pick up and move somewhere else and I want to retain employment with that company, almost certainly, because it's much more expensive to go find new employees than it is to retain an old one by simply, having them show up in a different state, get their driver's license, and boom,
Mhm.
you got a known quantity again. So we got to ask ourselves why and how this guy is, if he's moving from East LA to Maryland, what's that connection all about? I mean, this guy, is probably not a self-made millionaire, and he may, I mean, we've seen guys that have, run up tabs on credit cards, and they're bilking people out of money that, like I can't remember, Cunanan, I think, that killed Versace.
Right,
You
right,
know,
right, right.
he didn't have any money to speak of. He was a real poser, and he's working these high-end crowds and high-end tricks to fund his lavish lifestyle and move around. I mean, that guy was all over the country, so it wouldn't surprise me that this guy's got a social gift of some kind to have that kind of access to people, it moves so freely. If you've got somebody that's really socially insecure, yeah, moving across country is going to be a hard thing enough. Starting a new job, just moving to a new place, whatever it is. I mean, this guy's got to be pretty confident about what he's doing, regardless of what it is.
The other thing that jumped out on me could be at me. I'm sorry, but it could be nothing, could be something. And we're going to have to wait and see. We're going to have to wait and see. But we do believe the guy we know he left his DNA there. The guy that killed Rachel Moren was in LA, 6 miles away or whatever it is, close by, right? We know these
Yeah.
guys really, I know for a fact, these guys put a lot of mileage on their cars too. They like to travel. But the point I want to bring up is, when we look at Maleesa, she was stuffed into a refrigerator, so she could not be seen. And when we look at Rachel Moren, she was stuffed in like a tunnel, like a sewage tunnel or water tunnel or something in a creek, so she couldn't be seen. And
Yeah, she was off trail. Yeah.
she was only found during the search. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm just wondering if that's part of, this guy's mentality, out of sight, out of mind, and if that could be, part of a signature. I don't know. I don't know. I'm jumping here. I'm more to be revealed. We need more to be revealed.
Well, and you bring up another good point, John. Back to the refrigerator angle and the beating that Melisa took. I mean, unless this guy is wearing full hazmat gear, it'd be awfully impossible, or not very probable that he wouldn't leave some sort of DNA behind. From could be heavy respiration, cutting his hands, any number of interactions that is going to cause bodily fluid to exchange that's got that marker. I mean, obviously LA is a big place, and it's not like, even if it's urgent, it's going to take them a while to get any DNA results, because you got to believe that regardless of whether those two events are tied together, that they're looking at that. I mean, I would think that would be, priority one with a violent crime like that. You almost certainly have to believe that there's got to be, hair and fiber. I mean, you got to struggle. You've got all kinds of things going on here. He didn't this wasn't an assassination, like from a firearm or some other method. This was up close and personal with this guy, just like it was with Rachel. I mean, he wasn't shy about that at all. Not just because of the location, but with the victim themselves. I mean, he didn't hold back one bit. He didn't have one bit of restriction going on there in either of those attacks. So,
No, you're absolutely correct. You're absolutely correct. Up close and personal.
Yeah.
It's up close and personal. So I guess more will be revealed, and we'll be staying on top of this case. We want to see both of these guys, if it's not one, and there are two, off the street ASAP,
Yeah,
because, and I know law enforcement's really putting a full court press on this. They're really doing a great job, because this is, this is some horrible, horrible stuff, and it's only going to get worse. They don't stop. These guys
right.
don't stop. They just don't stop. They get a lot of gratification out of it. They're fantasizing about it all the time. It's just always on their mind. They got their mind on murder and murder on their mind, and it's just the way they travel through life. They travel through life. We're going to put up a couple of numbers too. We're going to put up number for law enforcement for Maleesa out in LA. If anybody has any tips, please call law enforcement. If anybody has any tips on who may have attacked Melisa, killed Melisa, if she was having any problems with anybody, I think it's very important. And also, we'll have the number for Rachel Moren. We'll put up a number for Rachel Moore, law enforcement out in Maryland. They're doing a really good job. They're really, really putting a lot of effort into this. So, hopefully soon we have some answers. Is there anything else you'd like to say, Dustin, before we break?
No, I like you, John. I hope that we can get this guy off the street, or law enforcement get him off the street sooner than later, because this guy's on a, like you said, whether it's one guy or two guys, two guys is even worse, because now you got to find two people, and you got two people that are on a real jag. So it makes it even more important. He's attacking people that in just horrible ways, and hopefully that I had read also, John, that Moren's family was doing a lot of canvassing out in LA with that with some of that information. And man, I mean, I can't emphasize enough, to anybody that's watching this, whether you front desk clerk at the apartment complex, or maybe a coworker, there's no real such thing as, I mean, trivial information when it comes to this sort of offense.
Exactly.
So definitely, I think it's great that you're putting the numbers for law enforcement out there. It's really important that people, man, if you got something on your mind, if you see something, say something. If you know something, chime in. Let these guys know.
And also, too, you're right. Rachel Moren's family's putting a full court press on this in LA now. They put a full court press and have a full court press going on getting it out, getting the information out in Maryland. They're doing a fantastic job family-wise. I mean, it's unbelievable. And I think there's like at least, there's a good sized reward. I think it's about 30,000 that they have right now. And I think that rewards will be headed up as time goes by. But anyway, I want to thank you so much for appearing today. As always, invaluable information. We can't thank you enough. You really know your stuff. And, we always appreciate when you have the time to be on.
Well, I appreciate it too, John. Yeah, thank you.
And, so to you and our audience, we'll say goodbye. We have a great audience. They love you too.
Yeah, they're fantastic. I love those
great.
guys.
I mean, they're great.
They're fantastic.
Smart too. They're smart.
Really smart, super thoughtful comments, and just good, putting it's good debate, in the comment section. A lot of times, I really appreciate that. You can tell people really care, and they're really putting their mind toward, thinking, or kind of around the corners with some of these cases. I just think that's fantastic. These guys, these criminals, John, as and I know, these guys are used to operating outside of the light. So the more you talk, the more, visual information you put out, like Moren's family's doing, that's pressure, man, and, thank God they're keeping it on, and good for them too. I think it's fantastic.
Fantastic. So thank you so much for being on. I want to thank the audience as always. Please continue to comment. We love your comments. Like Dustin even mentioned, very, very smart and thoughtful comments. And please subscribe. We love your subscriptions. Be very careful out there. This is a rough world we live in today. Stay on your toes. And until next time, have a great day and God bless. Thank you so much.
Thanks a lot, John.
Thank you.